This is a Momentum Media production.
Welcome to the Smart Property Investment Show, the podcast by investors for investors.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Smart Property Investment Show. I'm Grace Ormsby, and this show is all about investors, their stories, the good, the bad, the ugly. And while a lot of the time we do hear some of the probably fair weather stories that are out there, it's not always the case when it comes to property investing. And today's guest has seen probably what some of us would hope to never see in our own property investment journeys. His name is Anthony Najafian. Anthony, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story, because it is not the nicest story to have to be telling over and over again.
That's right, Grace, and I'm happy to be here and speaking with you. No worries.
Anthony, you were one of the first purchasers in the Mascot Towers, which a lot of people, while they may not have seen the development happening itself, in the years since have probably cottoned on to the story of that building and what's been going on. It has become a bit infamous, especially in New South Wales, with the issues with building, the defects that were found within the building. You know this better than I do. But before we get into sort of what has happened since, you obviously went into purchasing an off-the-plan apartment thinking that it was a great investment for yourself.
Yeah, that's right, Grace. So in 2008, we were just really, trying to start a family, and we were looking for, a place that we could afford, that we could, be able to live and hopefully in future be able to upgrade. So we settled on Mascot, namely because it was so close to the city, the beaches, the transport, lots of stuff that we knew was sort of in the pipeline for the area as well. And yeah, I was actually the first purchaser and the first resident at Mascot Towers in 2008, August to be exact.
Wow, that would have been around GFC timing. Not that it's really, really relevant, but, for so many people, it was a pivotal point in their lives, in their careers. That would have been a odd spot to be in, Anthony, at that point in time.
It was, and I know we were doing it, pretty tough around then as well, and I wasn't earning that much myself, and I sort of took the offer of putting a certain percentage down, and then being able to have somewhere to start from, and I can tell you, for the time that we lived in Mascot, it was just such an awesome place, right on top of the station. There was just so much convenience all around. So, yeah, it was a while back during the GFC.
So how long did you live in there yourself?
So we actually lived there until 2018, I believe. And then from there, we actually rented it out to one of my wife's friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that was, I think, towards the end of 2018. So we lived there for, over 10 years.
And until then, it was great. It was exactly what you needed it to be.
Yeah, the levies were actually pretty good. And, we just really made it into our home. We had so many great life events there. And just recently, I took a video of the apartment when I went in, and I was sort of expecting it to look cracked and dirty and all that sort of stuff. But I got so emotional because it looked like so nice. Like there was hardly any dust there. Everything was exactly, how we had left it, with a great view of the city and everything. And, so, try to focus on, on the positive moving forward. But it is a big catastrophe. That's for sure.
How much did it cost to purchase at that point in time? Like really nearly 20 years ago now. And was it a 1-bedroom apartment?
Yeah. And we got it for under 400. And we spent quite a number of years just paying interest only, just due to our financial situation. So pretty much up to now, over 15 plus years, we've paid a lot of repayments and a lot of interest on it. That's for sure.
So talk to me about when you then, you moved out and rented it out to someone else. It kind of kickstarted your journey as an investor rather than an owner-occupier. How long was it between, switching to a landlord and an investor that the issues started to arise around the building?
So, yeah, when we moved out around 2018, we at that point purchased another apartment off the plan. And the idea was that the rent that we would get, we would use to pay, for this loan. So we essentially refinanced and had a bigger loan. Now, it was probably 4 years, quite a while after we actually started getting defects, sort of like defects notices and things like that. And, before we knew it, there was like a bit of an emergency. Everyone was being asked to leave the building by 8:00. And I, just drove there immediately, and so it was there for, quite a number of years. And then all this sort of happened, and it all sort of happened when the next door development started. There were people saying they could feel the building shaking. So, yeah, it was a number of years.
Was it something that you'd ever had concerns about prior to the real issues starting?
Look, not really. I always felt like it was a safe place that we could always return to. We had a lot of confidence and trust in the system. And then I say even the developers themselves, back in 2008, it was regarded that building was probably the tallest around the area, and the developer was generally well regarded. When people compared that building to subsequent buildings built around the area, they always spoke about Mascot Towers in some sense of pride because of, just the structure and the integrity of the developer, so on and so forth. And that sort of gave me confidence as well, knowing as well that the certifier that certified it was from Botany Council or now Bayside Council, sort of reaffirmed subconsciously in our mind that everything was okay. So, yeah.
Until it wasn't.
Until it wasn't, yeah. It was like a surreal dream. Got the text, got the message, went out there, and it was all surrounded by police cars and fire trucks, and the whole streets were all like fully barricaded off. And I was just like, didn't really believe it. And then even that night on the 14th of June, 2019, as we were driving home, we still weren't worried. We just thought like it's just like a one-day thing, and I didn't get that real sense that something was really wrong. It still hadn't hit me. In fact, it was probably 3 or 4 months after that it really hit me about how serious this was. I was still thinking we could go back there, and it was just sort of more like a compliance type thing.
We're going to take a quick break there, but don't go away. Plenty more from Anthony Najafian still to come. See you soon.
Are you looking to invest for a big return, but are unsure which suburb is up and coming and guaranteed to give you the most bang for your buck? Smart Property Investment and Pure Property Investment have unveiled the Fast 50 report for 2025, identifying the suburbs backed by research that are giving investors the highest returns. Don't make any investing decisions until you read the free report. Visit smartpropertyinvestment.com.au to download the report.
Hello, welcome back to this episode of the Smart Property Investment Show. We are chatting with Anthony Najafian, who was an investor in Mascot Towers, an owner-occupier for a fairly long period, a decade, Anthony, before you did move out and kickstart what should have been your investment portfolio. But it was not to be with this one anyway, a success story. We've all heard about what happened with the Mascot Towers. But Anthony, to give a little bit more colour to people's understanding of what you went through and what it's been like. Obviously, as you said just before the break, there was sort of a 3 to 4 month period where you still thought it was compliance issues, not anything to worry about. Maybe some rectification would have to take place, but then it would be business as usual again, a home for someone again. What is the extent that you know now of some of the issues plaguing that building?
Sure. So the government commissioned 2 reports involving Engineers Australia and a number of accredited specialists. And essentially, the resulting conclusion was that it was due to the next door development's actions in hitting the water table and in essence, taking the soil underneath the building to create voids under the building. And that was in conjunction with the original Mascot Towers developer who had some, who had done some faulty things in the actual construction of the building, including having the wrong load-bearing slip joints within the wrong type, so to speak. So I believe the culpability to some extent was somewhat, I guess, pointing towards an equal culpability for both the original developer and the new offending developer. What I do know is that the major catalyst was actually next door going through the water table and creating that volatility underneath the building.
Oh, wow.
I myself and with a number of other people believe that the building would have lasted for a very long time. It would have gone for a very long time. In fact, the actual exterior was quite sound compared to some of the other buildings in the area.
And as you said before, you went back and it still looks okay. It looks structurally.
Yeah. That's what really killed me. Like I've been back a few times and, when I saw it, it just looked so like it was brand new. Everything was still polished. There weren't any cracks in my building, hadn't been broken into. Everyone else's apartments had been broken into, but my one didn't. And I just felt so depressed for a while because it was just like, this is the place that we always wanted to live at. And, we just had so many fond memories growing up there. And I just I found it really hard to leave. So, yeah.
And how, when the issue first arose, there was that emergency situation where you said no one could get back in the building. Was it that there were cracks appearing? What was the sort of initial instigator for there is something wrong here and it's not safe?
So I believe it had happened in the preceding weeks, but essentially one of the building manager and one of the engineers had made the call that the cracks appearing were going to get worse. That was a surety, and that the occupation of the building was likely going to be at risk. And I think they had made that call pretty abruptly based on the preceding events. It was just getting worse, and they didn't want to have the risk. I initially thought it was an overreaction. I'm not so sure today, but yeah, pretty much everyone got notices and messages to say you need to be out by, I think it was 7:00. And, people were out, they were already out, so by the time they came home, they couldn't actually go back to home. People had their wallets and mobiles and all that sort of stuff there. So it was really, it's really crazy, Grace, for something like that to happen. And, yeah, that was pretty much what happened that night.
And that was 5 years ago now.
Yeah.
What has been going on since then? Because obviously a lot of people suddenly didn't have a home to go back to. You were a landlord of a tenant living in that property as well. There's obviously been a lot of issues, and I know you have been fighting for a lot of support over that time period. But what happened initially and what's been happening since then? Because there's obviously been, the system is not set up for remedy post a building not being deemed safe for people to live in. And that is something you are nodding furiously along with me, that is something that you've obviously had to grapple with over this time.
Yeah, it was such a mudslide of bad news from the moment it happened to where we are now. It was just continuous, relentless. First of all, there was just major discrimination against anyone who was considered an investor because we're apparently rich enough, or it's part of our risk appetite to be an investor. And these sort of things happen. That was the sort of view that the government and other organizations viewed us at. And that just made it so much worse in having a community that we could work on issues together. And I did actually set up a number of Facebook groups, WhatsApp groups, that sort of thing to get the bulk of the owners, both occupiers and investors, together. And throughout that whole period, really, we're just lobbying and advocating for both equal support, but also for, recognition and support from the government for everyone as a whole. And I worked on speaking with a lot of media. I set up, channels or tentacles out there to speak with people of influence and government ministers. And that last 5 years has really been like a jail sentence for us. It's just been, so intense. It's just always with you. It's like this huge financial, legal burden that you've got that you can't get rid of. So, we've definitely had a lot of downs and some ups, I guess. But it's good to be at the end of it, so that's been the experience so far.
So you are at the end of it. Do you feel like it is done at this point?
Towards the end, but I still have this unending sense of justice not being served. The fact that this could happen to us with all the regulation playing field in place, it's just like 5 years of absolute torture, and we're just supposed to be okay with it and just, move on with it. It's great that the gaps have been addressed by the building commissioner and people can have more confidence in future in apartments. But as far as I'm concerned, there's still a lot that's unresolved.
So where are you at then at that resolution stage?
We've come to an arrangement with the bank, and thankfully they've been supportive. Although we weren't able to receive, the government dictated that we weren't able to receive the same offer that owner-occupiers were getting, which is a complete waiver of their toxic Mascot Towers, that in the instance of owner investors, whether they be there for 10 years or there for, the months preceding the actual incident, we don't get that level of support. It falls on us. So we need to actually be able to pay it off. So I've come to some arrangement with my bank, but there's still this glaring shortfall that I need to be able to pay off, merge with my existing mortgage that I'm paying for, funnily enough, an apartment that's also somewhat in the same issues as what's happened at Mascot Towers.
Gosh, no way.
Yeah. It's the place that we're at the moment. We also purchased off the plan, and it's got major defects, cladding issues, encroachment issues, and in the Supreme Court sort of thing. So it's like, how do you pick two homes that are, in that much strife? So it's probably the face of what was wrong, in New South Wales here in the first place. I'm an absolute poster child for that.
Do you mind sharing, with the bank and their support, is it a good arrangement that they've come to, or is it just, does it feel like they've done enough for you?
I would say so. They've carried more than their burden for what they were entitled. And look, I feel that the government ultimately had thrown this onto the banks to be able to pick up some of that slack. And I think for what the bank has done, I'm grateful in being able to offer some concessions there. But there's still this huge, 800 grand plus amount of debt that I have to pay, including the mortgages, which unfortunately just puts me further and further from ever, being able to pay off this place. What's worse as well, Grace, is all of this happened when the interest rates were starting to get higher. And at the same time, the housing shortage and rental crisis was getting worse. So we were sort of losing out, not just in not getting rent, but not getting the additional reflective rent that, every other place would be getting, and at the same time paying more for the repayment. So those two things in parallel sort of accelerated the losses. And obviously, when you sort of get into these sort of things, you also start making worse financial mistakes in desperation to sort of cling to any sense of stability. And, I'm guilty of making, bad financial decisions specifically because of this occurring. So it certainly didn't help me in that sense.
We're going to take another quick break there. We'll see you very shortly with more from Anthony Najafian.
Ready to supercharge your mornings while supporting work which improves the lives of Aussie heroes? This June, Invictus Australia is challenging everyone to rise at 6 a.m. and get active for 6 days by taking part in their 0600 challenge. Conquer your morning however you choose, a run, swim, or a group fitness class. Whatever gets you active and connected. Empower others to support your challenge and fundraise to help strengthen the lives of our Aussie heroes through sport.
and help Invictus Australia combat the statistic that we lose 6 veterans to suicide a month. So, what are you waiting for? Visit www.0600.com.au to sign up today and join the 0600 community.
Welcome back to this episode of the Smart Property Investment Show. I'm joined by Anthony Najafian, who has bought in not only one tower with a defect, but in a second one. Anthony, it's been a bit of a rough trot for you. How are you going at this point in time? I mean, not only have you been dealing with all this, but we've had COVID, we've had, a pandemic, we've had a different economic environment to what we had for much of the last decade. It's a lot for any one person to have on their plate.
Yeah, it's been tough the last 5 years with all these things happening. Not one home, but 2 of the biggest assets that I thought I owned, being so corrupted and so vulnerable, in this city, in this state, in this country. And then all the other stuff that's happened, obviously, with the interest rate rises, cost of living, COVID, all that sort of stuff. So, it's been tough. We've had some pretty low days, but thankfully we're still here and we can continue to be optimistic for the future and see if we can ever be a homeowner or investor again in the future.
Can I just say good on you as well for going out and talking about this?
Thank you.
It's got to be a hard thing to do.
Yeah, it brings back memories, but I also think it makes me more determined as well to be able to seek some sense of justice in some way. I guess having that extra fuel or drive doesn't not help, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And so what is next for you? You talk about being kind of close to a resolution. Can you talk us through that? And then, what you are looking forward to, or what could be exciting down the track?
Yeah, sure. So what's next for me, really just be able to get on top of my repayments with the bank, be able to save enough to be able to give my daughter some type of future, some sense of future where she won't have to, go through as much. And I sort of think that's her entitlement as well, We've worked hard and we've all done everything we can to be able to get to this point. And I think the very least that I can do for her is to give her some financial security in the future. And that's what I'll be intending to do. And I'll be, at the same time, I think looking to help others. I think this experience getting to that sort of low has really helped me evaluate things that are important. And I certainly want to help other people in some way based on the knowledge and experience I've gotten to date, whether that be via NFPs or just general investment mentorship. Well, probably not the best person to be mentored by, but nonetheless, I want to do that. And I think, if we can ever afford property, let alone a home, we'll probably be looking at having, as in an actual home with land, as opposed to strata living, not just based on my experience, but I just feel that over time, that's a safer investment, to have that and to be able to have more say in the way that things are done on your land.
I was going to say, it wouldn't have shocked me if you said you were completely scared off property, full stop, Anthony, with everything that's gone on. But does it still just feel like it's more the development and the strata side of things that can cause the issues?
I know that there's always risks with all types of properties. And I know with what the building commissioner has done in the last 5 years, he's certainly given more confidence to people purchasing apartments, which was his goal from the beginning by implementing, new laws and regulations and ratings and all that sort of stuff. So for me, going through this experience and also somewhat making a mistake on both, I think I'd just be looking towards one day owning a home on land, probably somewhere on the outskirts, but somewhere that we could call our own, with the view that we could hopefully get some good yields and good equity over time.
You said people might not want to hear from you because of the investment decisions you have made, but you've learned so much from this, clearly. Just the way you're speaking about it, you've had to deal with a lot more with this than normal people would have ever have dreamed about dealing with. You talked with building commissioners, you've sat down with state governments. If anything, you're probably one of the most well-equipped, Anthony.
Thank you, Grace. Yeah, I've definitely learnt a lot. I've upgraded in a lot of things. And I think that really occurs when you go to your deepest lows, when there's stuff that's outside of your control and where you have to bear and face it and really be in survival mode sort of thing. And despite it being so hard and so many, consequential things happening of it, I'm grateful for the things that I have learned. And honestly, I just want to be able to give back in some way to make things easier for, just other Australians in my position. And I feel that, there's probably some things that I can do to help. And I'm grateful this has also been a catalyst to help the government to change some of these things which were happening in New South Wales. Like, for example, the next door developer, when they were building, it was just like they would be constructing at all times of the day and just paying off the fines in order to, because the value of the fines was much less than the stop work sort of thing. And you could just tell pretty much from the onset what it was going to look like, with that sort of mentality. Everyone's just trying to make a profit as much as possible. And I think things have sort of changed here. Yeah. And hopefully it'll give new immigrants confidence, or new people who can't afford a house confidence that this sort of stuff won't happen again.
And and do you feel like that as well, that it has changed a lot for the better?
I think it has. I mean, compared to the last 5 years, sort of what we've gone through. And I think reflecting on just some of the changes that have happened here to give consumer confidence, I think it's better than what I had envisaged. So I'm grateful that that's happened. It's somewhat taken our suffering and our experience to help change laws for, for the health and happiness of families in future.
Anthony, I know you've had to go through hell and back to get to this point, but you should be so proud of even just the viewpoint that you've taken on all this as a learning lesson and a catalyst to do some amazing things down the track. And I can't wait to see what comes next for you. So good on you for keeping up the fight. It's got to be one of the most tiring things that anyone could be going through. And to see you coming out and still have positivity is incredible to see.
You, Grace. Yeah, I think we all learn from our experiences. And, it's definitely been hard, but I think it's hardened myself and given me more resolve and resilience. And I think, ultimately it had to happen to some extent for things to change. So hopefully things continue to get better in this state.
Well, best of luck with it all. You'll have to come back on the show when you've got your next update for us. That is going to be an awesome one. So keep up the good work. And I've loved chatting with you, and I'm sure our listeners have really appreciated your insights too. Thank you so much.
Pleasure, Grace. Thanks for having me.
To everyone who is listening along, we hope you have enjoyed this episode. Like or review us on whatever platform that you do listen to your podcasts on. If you have any questions, editor@smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. As always, stay up to date with all the latest on our website. Subscribe to our bulletins if you have not already, and check us out on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and X. Until next time, stay safe and well wherever you're listening from. Bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property, or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.
Feeling trapped by rising interest payments? Escape from mortgage prison with expert refinancing assistance from Finny. We have helped hundreds of borrowers break free from higher loan repayments by finding a more suitable loan. Our expert team can quickly assess your situation, and if there's a better lender available, we'll find it fast. Don't delay. Call today. Speak to a Finny mortgage specialist on 02 8866 2444 or visit our website at www.finny.com.au.